Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. And it's officially allergy season down here. You know how they have the yellow pollen?
Oh, yeah.
People that don't live in the South or haven't been down here, they don't understand what it is. But I anticipate the next couple weeks are going to be pretty brutal for me trying to get through the show. So we'll see how this goes. The big news, our big topic, the Broncos trade for Russell Wilson. We're going to get to that in a second because the deal that made it happen, Aaron Rodgers announced he is returning to Green Bay to play for the Packers. He said that the details of the contract are wrong. The initial contract that came out said that he was going to be the highest paid player. That's how I had it worded on here, but I changed it whenever I redid it after his tweet. But they were looking at a 4-year deal, which, to be honest, I kind of liked, just because he had said he wants to play till he's in his 40s. I think he's 38 right now. And you're able to spread out some of the cap space issues. And now they're able to tag Devontae Adams. So he's coming back. And I think you're right back in the mix where you have a chance to get into the playoffs. Playoffs, Aaron Rodgers is different than regular season Aaron Rodgers. I think the only difference between him and Peyton Manning are that Peyton Manning struggled to win early. Aaron Rodgers got the Super Bowl earlier in his career. And I hate to say it, but he's kind of coasted off that. And now you're looking at, hey, a guy's going to play into his 40s. Is it bad for the Packers? Like, not necessarily, because I think everyone was waiting for that gigantic drop-off as they have to go into a rebuild. He's able to kind of bridge that. Now I want to see what are the parallels between Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers situation and Green Bay's situation. Because Ben staying so long allowed them to kind of build up the defense, and then I think he stayed a little bit too long. Where now some of those defensive guys, I don't know if they're going to be able to work out contract deals for them and also take time to develop a new quarterback. The Packers have Love waiting there. I think this is going to be his third year waiting. Aaron Rodgers also hinted that he might just retire. So signing like a 4-year deal and then retiring a year or two into it would also benefit the Packers. And, I mean, you still get the big bulk amount of the money guaranteed or whatever up front. So he's able to get paid and then maybe just ride off. But I want to get your take, Matt, as an outsider, non-NFL owner. Like, what do you think of that deal?
I like that last little slip in there. I had the same feelings with the Packers signing him that I did at the prospect of Pittsburgh trying to trade for him. I just don't think it's worth it at this stage in his career. Like, I was thinking about this earlier today. The only scenario where this makes any sense whatsoever is if you're in a situation like what Tampa was 2 years ago, where you're completely just trying to buy one last ring, one last go, and you're going to just break the bank in free agency and bring all the weapons, all the defense, all the everything, win a year, and then implode. Because when you look at Tampa right now, what they did, they were able to bring Brady in. They were able to win their Super Bowl. They paid for every free agent and traded for guys, and now the majority of them are going to be gone, and they'll be lucky to finish third in the division this year.
And you mean fourth of the division would be the Falcons, right?
Likely, because Ridley's on his suspension.
Which I forgot to even mention in the topics, what an oversight. I mean, he goes out, so he's not even, I guess he's still on the roster, right? But he's on like the injured reserve or whatever they put him on.
Yeah.
And he's betting on games. And I think the biggest issue, it's kind of like where Pete Rose was. He's betting on his own team. Now, he said he bet on them to win. I don't think the NFL is going to reveal. I was also interested to see how they found out about it. And it seemed like he gave an interview. And so the NFL statement kind of said something about the interview that he gave. And so I wonder if he kind of just ratted himself out by saying like, yeah, I won a bunch of money or I lost a bunch of money gambling on the game. And they were like, what? Which makes me wonder, like, the NFL, I mean, obviously they're not listening to their own players' stuff. I mean, maybe someone out there is.
I think it was because he used an online, from one of the news reports that I had read, he did it from an online platform, and it pinged because he was betting from Georgia, and so like when he did it through the Florida-based site where it was legal, it pinged on one of the like detection radar things for like a compliance office. I don't know how accurate that is, but it's either there would be the NFL would pay to have those kind of services in place to try to watch for people betting and tampering.
Well, see, I don't know how in depth it was. The original statement that I read made it seem like he mentioned it in an interview, like as a mistake. I do know that they probably have like in-state protection against like gambling if it's not legal in your state. The only other way is like, do they give the players NFL emails? Like if he signs up with his own email, that's kind of like, remember that, was that site like the dating site? How they used to have all those commercials. There's like a dating site for like married men or something, and they got hacked. And then a bunch of like guys had been using like their work emails or like whatever. And so then they were like the hackers were trying to get them to like pay ransom to not be able to contact like their place of work and be like, hey, you know that they're doing this on company time or whatever. So, but that, I mean, that would be the other way. But now that's going to drive me nuts. But I will say that, I don't know how far, like I'm sure that they're looking at it. The name isn't really common. I almost looked it up just to see how many people had that name. Because like my name's pretty unique. So like there's not that many out there with my name. So if like that happened, I mean, I guess there probably are a good bit of Richard Leahy's, but I go by Richie, so it doesn't really matter. But out there in the world, I mean, I'm sure there are going to be a bunch of other people with a similar name, so it's going to be hard for the NFL to kind of track it. Even if he was giving an interview, though, like, does the NFL just have people listening to player interviews all day? Because I think that would get tiresome, right? I mean, how many players do they have in the league? Like, what if it's like a walk-on kicker somewhere and doing tryouts, and he's out there talking trash on the league? I'm sure they have eyeballs anywhere. Or I just wonder if it was kind of like random fans listening and then tattling on him, right? To me, that seems like the most likely scenario with the way social media is these days.
Yeah.
Where he's like, he said something off the cuff, maybe like doing a live or something, because, you know, they do those. And then some fans probably like, I'll get him. Yeah. Who's rivals with them? Like some Saints fan, crazy enough. I mean, they pay for bounties. Like, why would he not be turning that into the NFL almost immediately? Saying like, hey, you should look into this because it sounds like he's betting on his team. I mean, I did think maybe we should just invite him to our fantasy football league this year. I don't know if he'd be free to do it, right? Because wouldn't that if he's completely disassociated with the league, he can do whatever he wants, right? He can gamble as much as he wants. He did say that it was only $1,500, and I bet that hurt some people because they're like, bro, I can't even get that extra money in a year, let alone just be gambling away. That would be. So I know off topic, but anything else you want to add on that?
Just no, nothing on him. I
mean, you would think, and this goes for just all players, 'cause sometimes they give advice for, I know we have high school, college athletes listening, so just stay out of trouble. Like if you're trying to do it, and even for those like maybe you're on scholarship or whatever, why would you ever do anything to risk that? Because then that's when you see players that are like backed into a corner do like even crazier stuff to try to make it back up. But it's like, hey, you know what you got to do? Do it. I know he had to have known, because like, I mean, if they make you sit down and they explain it to you when you're in college about like gambling on your own team or like gambling on your sports or whatever, they even gave warnings about doing NCAA bracket picks. for money whenever I played. So it's like, if they do that in the NCAA, I guarantee they do that in the NFL times 100. So he had to have been aware that, like, hey, even though you're disassociated, you can't be doing that stuff. And then crazy to me, because now he's going to come back, unless it is a problem. He did tweet out that he doesn't have a gambling problem, which we'll find out if that's true if he's out for the rest of his career, you know? So hopefully he turns it around, because I hate to see a player. That's like such a weird way to go out. I mean, seemingly he has it head on straight. I haven't heard anything.
Well, maybe the NFL should go in the opposite direction. Maybe they should make all of the players pay money in, so the gamble that their team's going to win, so that they get extra money for winning and the extra incentive of playing hard. Because then you can't have you take the owners out of the equation of trying to purposefully lose, because like, why would you make them lose 10% of their money?
Well, see, that's like the stock market. And if they would turn out, that's basically just putting players into stocks, trying to see if they're going to win and if it's going to go up. Or like insider trading or something. Who knows? Because all it takes is, you know, that 10%, some mobster comes in and he's like, I'll pay you 15. He's like, I'll shank that kick. You know what? What's that movie, The Replacements or whatever? Weren't there gamblers trying to get the replacement guy to shank the kick?
Yeah.
Yes, that's how it would be a real life thing, because they wouldn't go for the big guy. They'd go for the guy that's like barely getting anything. Like, oh, 10% of your salary, bro, we'll match that if you blow it. We know, like, you're a punter, drop the punt. Slip and like pretend you blew your knee out, and then let him return it for a fumble for a touchdown. Perfect plan, Matt. That's how you get around those scenarios. But getting back to Aaron Rodgers, like, I agree that he's at the point in his career where, are they going to make a run? I think if you're looking at the ceiling, obviously winning the Super Bowl, they had a good chance to do it last year until they fell apart in the playoffs again. I think you're still in the same spot. Now, is he going to get over the hump? History in the past decade says no. Right? Because it's been over 10 years since that Super Bowl now. So I don't see the negative of it. Now you're able to, like I said, now you can build up for a couple years, get your defense and set your roster in a better spot. Because cap was the issue. You trade him away, you get all the cap, but then you're already kind of starting your rebuild. Now you can extend hope, and maybe you don't have to worry about your quarterback if you're still going to go with Love. Now you can use that cap space to kind of build maybe for the long term. And that's where it's going to be interesting to see which direction they go. Do they try to do a quick fix like you said and go all in? Based on their year last year, weren't they the overall number one in the NFC? I don't think you have to do that. Like, Tampa Bay had to do that because they had no one. They weren't even in the playoffs. They hadn't made the playoffs for like 10 years or something.
Yeah.
So they had to kind of bring everybody in. Green Bay's had enough to be NFC regular season champs. Now you just need to get some other guys, build that depth up, and try to get ready to turn it over, because if Aaron Rodgers leaves, Devontae Adams leaves next year because they franchise tagged him, I bet they could do that a couple years in a row, right? Is there a limit on how many times you can do it?
I want to say 2 or 3.
Was he last year? I can't remember. But, I mean, I'm sure they're going to have to work something out. But that's where maybe you can get the cap room, draft some guys, try to bring some other weapons in, and see how it goes. So, the other situation, the Broncos, they were picking for Aaron Rodgers. I'll be honest, Matt. I know that their roster looks good. I don't think it's Super Bowl championship good, right?
Well, I think I would much rather overpay for Aaron Rodgers than to give what the Broncos gave away for Russell Wilson.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like, in Green Bay's eyes, they probably would have got the same return from the Broncos if they were able to get it done. I know you had a higher salary, so that makes it a little bit tougher. So maybe you're only getting those future draft picks. And it kind of seems like Seattle's going for a complete rebuild now, right? Who's even on their roster as a quarterback? I mean, I guess they tried it for Drew Lock, right?
Yeah.
So you have that going for you. Is it Geno Smith? Is that who their quarterback was?
At one point, yeah.
I don't remember what their most recent was. Because, I mean, it's not like Russell Wilson doesn't get hurt every year. Didn't he break his finger? Wasn't that last year? It was like completely separated. So, I've said it before. I've had him in fantasy. I gave him in my fantasy breakdown. I finally let him go last year because the same thing happens every year with him. He starts hot. Midway through the season, he falls off harder than Ben Roethlisberger. And to me, it's baffling. It's like, what are you doing? Clinch the division. Like, do something. You're like poking him with a stick. It's like, what? And this year he gets hurt. So I'm like, watch this be the year where he comes back and he doesn't have that drop off. But nope. So now it's like, all right. And if I'm comparing the two, I've seen Aaron Rodgers. He's good in the regular season down the stretch. It's only in the playoffs where he like tenses up or something. And maybe it's just because the teams are a little bit better, so it could go either way. And he's had some bad luck. I don't know. I think they should have scored more on the 49ers this year, if I'm being candid. And Russell Wilson, though, he's falling apart, and really nothing's changing. So I don't know why he struggles down the regular season stretch. And by that time, he's struggling so bad, forget the playoffs, Matt. So you're telling me that he's going to turn it around with the Broncos and not only just come in and make an impact, he also has to beat Patrick Mahomes in the division. And then whatever you think of the Raiders, I think they made a bad decision changing coaches, but we'll see what happens. Didn't they get McDaniels too? Like,
yeah,
horrific. Like, what kind of idiotic move is that? But if I'm looking at that division, I would say, like, does Russell Wilson make them more of a favorite? I kind of feel like he's back into an NFC West situation where he'll be competing with the Broncos, but are they going to be enough to take on Mahomes? Like, hasn't he been losing the West to, like, the 49ers, the Rams anyway? I feel like he's back in that same situation. Because both the 49ers and the Rams made the Super Bowl more recent than the Seahawks. Right?
Yeah.
And it's been almost, I mean, how many years has it been for them? Since the Seahawks have been there? 8 years now? Maybe I'm wrong, but it's been a while. So you're telling me that he's going to come into Denver and make them a better team than Mahomes and the Chiefs? I don't think so. I don't see it. I think Broncos fans, they're going to be excited, but I think it's fool's gold. I think they're going to be like a Pittsburgh where you might get hot. You could lose some games where you're like, why are we losing to the whatever? Why are we losing to that team? And then you get in the playoffs and it's kind of just like, all right, we're done. No big deal, but that's kind of where I'm at. And honestly, I think the Packers are kind of in that same boat where you've been seeing what happens. They get to the playoffs, and then they bow out early. And that's it. I mean, I guess it wasn't early last year, or not the year before when they almost went to the Super Bowl, and it took that slide where he didn't run into the end zone for Tom Brady to have a chance to come back. So maybe now without Tom Brady, it's more open. I mean, Tom Brady's team was basically beat up, and Stafford is in. Did Stafford come back? Did he make that decision yet?
I don't think he has yet.
Because that will be the thing. Now in the NFC, that's one less team. Because also, like with Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay, he has to see all these other teams, like in the NFC, losing their quarterbacks. Tom Brady's out. Russell Wilson's leaving. He has to think, like, why the hell would I go to the AFC? Because they were trading him. I mean, Aaron Rodgers wasn't a free agent. And down here in Carolina, they wanted Russell Wilson, apparently. And that's what's all the talk has been. They, the main thing that they were looking at is they wanted someone to kind of come in and take over. I don't know if the Panthers would have been even a better situation than Seattle, though. Where they have McCaffrey, he doesn't even play. And then, I mean, Sam Darnold was an idiotic move, I said at the time. and now they're talking about possibly Mitch Trubisky. It's like, what are you doing? Like, do you want Matt Rule to just fail? Like, is he destined to become Penn State's next coach, Matt? Because I think, like, at some point, the Cosmos were like, hey, you might be coaching in Michigan. It's like, no, we're going to pull the rug out onto you. Harbaugh's back. They're like, you might be coaching at wherever you want to coach. And he's like, you know what? I am going to leave. And he's like politicking around. And then it falls through. And then what's going to happen is James Franklin is going to leave and go somewhere. He'll go to, like, who knows where.
This pull 1 for 1. He's going to go to Harbaugh will go to Carolina and Rule will go to Michigan.
No, I'm saying he's going to fall into Penn State's lap. James Franklin's going to go to, like, Florida State or somewhere. And everyone's going to kind of be surprised. And they're going to be like, no, we're going to get back to recruiting enough to just take over the ACC and compete with Clemson. And then Matt Rule will just show up in Penn State and be like, hey, guess what? I'm this great fit here for some reason. And they'll be like finally making the playoffs with him. And then the Panthers are going to just be self-destructing because it seems like they're not supporting him. And I think he is a good coach. And I think he would have did well at Michigan. I think he would have did well. He would do well at Penn State. I guess he was interested in LSU. They wanted someone apparently a little bit more decorated, which Brian Kelly definitely is getting close to the playoffs with Notre Dame. Or I guess not even the playoffs, getting close to the championship. They haven't done well, but like Harbaugh didn't really do that well. But since you brought up Harbaugh did announce that he's going to focus on winning that national championship, Matt. If you were wondering what he was planning on doing now that he's back.
Oh.
Because
I guess he doesn't have anything else better to do now.
Well, it's like, it's better than before, because I think Brady Hoke was like, yeah, we're going to chase the Big Ten championship. And I was always like, what? Why are you talking about? Like, that's like setting the bar so low for yourself. And not that the Big Ten championship is like meaningless or anything. But in today's sport, whenever you're recruiting, players want to hear that they're going to the playoffs. They don't want to hear you winning the Big Ten. That's like James Franklin talk. Like, hey, yeah, we beat Ohio State that one time and won the Big Ten that one time. And then recruits have to be like, okay, that's one time. Like, what's your goal? Are you winning the national championship? Because I haven't heard James Franklin talk like that. And so now finally Harbaugh speaks up and people are always negative talking like, haha, he thinks he can compete in the playoffs. It's like, well, if he starts messaging like that, then players will come and then they will. They will become like an Ohio State. Because remember how many games did Ohio State have to get blown out in the playoffs or national championship game to even get where they are now?
But I think you got to walk a fine line too, because you could also just be like, oh yeah, like be like Texas. We're back. We're respect us. And then you end up getting your butt kicked every week and you end up like with a 3-7 record.
Yeah, but that's where Texas is. Michigan wasn't parading last year that they're back. Right?
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, like, before you go saying, you know, we're competing for playoff spots and things, like, you got to have the roster and stuff ready to be there.
Well, see, that's where I think it was smart the way he waited, because he hasn't really said that he's like always talked about focusing on Ohio State, and I think that's where he got a lot of pressure because he kept losing to him. So it's like, are you really focused on him? And so now he's like, hey, we made the playoffs. Now we're ready to make that next step and win the national championship. Which to me is smart because like Georgia made the playoffs a couple years ago and they didn't win it. And so now they're able to focus on it. It took them a few years to get back. And then hopefully they're in a position to win it. Now Texas goes right to the top where they're like, hey, we beat Kansas State. We're back, baby. And then the next week they lose to Kansas. And it's like, oh, bro, that's worse. What are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? And so, like, I could see, like, if Michigan was back and we're selling, like, a couple years ago, they did that revenge tour, remember? And then they got killed by Ohio State, and it was like, oh, yeah, they did the revenge tour. They kind of did the Texas thing, which was good at the time because they were actually killing, like, Penn State and everybody. So it's like, all right, blowing out Notre Dame, that's pretty sweet. And then they get back to losing to Ohio State. So I think that took a lot of the luster off. So they haven't really been doing that. So that's where, if you want to compete for it, you got to just say it. It's kind of like whenever they talk about some NFL programs where it's like, yeah, we're going to win the division. And then it's like, okay, cool. What about after that? And they're like, no, we're good with just winning the division. And that's where I think you see a lot of the teams where people think that they're successful. And I don't want to say the names of like the Ravens or whatever. Maybe it is a Harbaugh thing where they're just focused on winning the division or whatever, beating their rivals. And it's like, what are you doing in the playoffs? Well, nothing. We're gonna be scared when we get there. But I want to see them take. I don't want to see the Ravens do it, but I want to see like some team like step up and take that next step. Like, are the Broncos going to be? We've seen them do this thing where they bring in Peyton Manning, win a Super Bowl, and then kind of fall off. Or do you think they're going to do that again? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know.
See, I didn't think they were in a good position last time either. But with Peyton Manning, you knew that they always had a chance. And then he looked awful in that first Super Bowl because they lost the first one to the Seahawks, didn't they?
Yeah.
And that was pretty much the Legion of Boom. That was their defense.
Well, I think like when they brought Manning in, like they had Wade Phillips as the defensive coordinator, and they had Von Miller, and they had like the defense was so stacked that it was almost in a similar situation to what he was in when he won the Super Bowl with the Colts. Was that he basically just couldn't lose the game, and they would be fine. And I think like this time around, thinking that you're going to bring in a high-power quarterback and he's going to do the same thing, but I think the difference being you're trading a lot of locker room caliber guys. Like they traded one of their defensive linemen who was like a voice of the locker room, and like we've talked about before, when you start trading away key locker room guys and captains and leaders on your team, and you don't have someone coming in to replace that's kind of a tough value. Like that's a lot to replace when you're giving 3 and 4 guys out of your locker room.
And that's where, I mean, they give up so much. Are they going to be able to turn it around fast? I honestly don't think they are. But, I mean, I've been wrong before, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're able to. I just don't think at this point that they're ready to go. We'll be looking over the next couple of weeks to see what other moves happen, because I still want to see, like, is Stafford committed to coming back? And what's he going to play like? Now, I already mentioned, like, the NFC's kind of wide open. Like, if you're Stafford, I would think, like, you have to come back. Like, I don't know if it's been announced. I tried to look to see if it was guaranteed, and I didn't see anything hard line, because I guess the date's not up yet. It should be next week, I think. Or is it the 16th or something like that? But it will be close to when we do the next show. But he has to think that it's open. We don't know what's happening with Garoppolo yet. And that would pretty much be the entire NFC West gone. I mean, I know Kyler Murray's having his thing too. Is there any movement that's going to happen on that? Because that would be another big thing. If they all go to the AFC, to me, that's kind of like crazy, right? Like, why are you guys all going there? Garoppolo, like, he could land with the Bucs. You're saying they're kind of in a rebuild, but you might be in a steady hold position where they still have enough guys left over from that Super Bowl where they can possibly win. And I'm not saying the Super Bowl, but they might be able to make the playoffs. It is an expanded playoff now, so why not? I mean, that's going to be something that we will see. I'm just looking around, like where Aaron Rodgers is. Like, I don't see the Lions really competing with them. I don't see the Bears competing with them. I think the Vikings made a mistake by not getting Harbaugh, because Harbaugh could have taken them to that next step. I don't know if he would have won the Super Bowl, but I mean, come on, the guy's basically won wherever he's been. And to just hire an unknown, like, offensive guy, like, oh, he's an offensive guru. How many times we hear that? Right?
A lot.
I mean, they could have hired Bieniemy if they wanted, like, an offensive guy that seems to be
they
like
they could have hired Gruden.
Which one? Jay,
John, the strength conditioning guy from Washington. They could have hired all of them.
So John is supposed to be, they're trying to go to arbitration. And John's been, like, complaining about it because that means they'll open everything up, I believe. I don't know my legal jargon, but I think that means both sides will kind of show all their evidence. And if John Gruden doesn't want to do it, then that kind of looks bad for him, right? I mean,
yeah.
If he had the proof, and maybe he doesn't have all that stuff saved, so that could even be worse. But I would think his lawyers would be able to get it from his cell phone providers. But maybe it was just him and this rogue GM which then would make him look like shit, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'd be like, all right, well, let's check my emails. Let's see who were on those email chains, right? And maybe he's kind of calling it out because he knows that they're all... I don't think that they would all be on there. So now I'm starting to think, okay, maybe John Gruden is the guy. And if they do open all this stuff up, what will we really see? Just him being an asshole? It's like... So we'll find out, because if he kind of drops it and it goes away, then that kind of makes me think that that's what the other stuff is. It's kind of just him then. So I guess I'll lose a lot of respect for him. I was thinking that he had proof that it wasn't just him. He was just kind of caught in the crossfire. But if they're willing to open it up, and he's not, then I'm like, oh man, he'll never coach again. I mean, it was pretty much bad. I don't want to say again, because he could be in the XFL for all I know. The Rock and Gruden doing commercials together. The Rock, I don't know how he finds the time, though. He's in so many movies. And he's doing NFL halftime. Or no, was that the pregame for the Super Bowl? He was there. I forget what he did. Anything else you had for the NFL?
No, I don't think.
All right. The other big thing I had, continuing, the Major League Baseball lockout. I tried to argue with a couple people to get some more information on the floor and the salary. And so just to get some clarification on this, it seems like I'm right where if they put in the floor at $100 million, most players are going to get a raise, right? So they're still going for that. And I guess the NFL, or not the NFL, the MLB owners are kind of afraid of inflation, where if they keep the ceiling so high at like $230 million, the cap's not really going to do anything for those teams. But what's going to happen is some teams are going to have to add, and maybe some players, this is their concern too, where now some players are going to be making more than what they're worth, and it's going to make it hard for them to maintain long careers, which I understand. That kind of makes sense. You know how like the NFL, where sometimes it's like, hey, Cam Newton needs to make this much league minimum for his whatever veteran position. It's better just to like not hire him, right? And so all the teams are going to be like, well, what's happening to him? It's like, no, he's been being pushed out. They'd rather gamble on someone younger, you know? And so I think Major League Baseball, a lot of the players might be worried about that. But like, let's be honest. How many players are really out there for baseball? I mean, we said how there are 200 minor league teams or something crazy. Why do all those teams exist? Who's still playing baseball? Right? I would think that the talent pool is shrinking. Because when I grew up, there were baseball games everywhere. Right? Everywhere, involving like everybody. Now it's like, hey, yeah, there's a travel summer league, and that's pretty much it. It's like, what happened to all the local teams? Oh, yeah, they don't exist anymore. We had to combine 4 cities for that. They had to drive to practice a half hour away. It's like every town had their own team, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Every town had their own team when we were growing up. Now I go back and I'm like, hey, what happened to the so-and-so team? It's like, oh, they combined with 3 other cities. And they're playing. It's much better now. It's like, how's it much better? Because you're getting only the people that can pay for lessons. So it seems like they're much better at baseball, but they're probably not. They're just taking the top guys from each area and making one semi-good team. But it's still not like minor league baseball comparative, but go ahead.
But I almost think too, like there's also more, like comparatively, you're having more players that are having to baseball specialize in it because they have the fall baseball leagues that weren't around, and some of the in Pennsylvania now there's like the indoor compound facilities where you're able to play games during the cold weather months. So I think there's more of a draw that if baseball is your thing, you can literally play year round, where that was kind of more of an advantage to the southern playing places in that regard. So you're starting to see some of that catch up, and it corners in some aspects, but
I don't know. Like, honestly,
maybe.
I know where you're going. I just don't know how many. I think with specializations, how many people are really choosing baseball, you know? Because honestly, steroids hurt them so much that if you're a young kid and you're like, hey, I'm thinking of playing baseball, and man, I've seen it. I went to some of those tryouts, and you saw the guys where their arms are as big as my head, and it's like, bro, you don't even look like a real person. Like, you can't even tell me that you're not on roids. And then it comes out like, oh yeah, I remember you. It's like, oh yeah, you were on steroids, right? You're like, oh yeah, 100%. It's like, oh, okay. Did they ever test you? It's like, no. It's like, okay. Like the real stuff? Like, yeah. Shots in the butt. It's like, okay. Like talking to old players like that I played with. So knowing that it was eligible for like, let me just think of like what some numbers would be. I would say 3 out of every 10 guys I think that I play with were on steroids. Like, not even joking, man. Maybe more. So, like, if you're at that level now or in the past, now you're coming up, and like, I'm not going to say that it wasn't available to me, but it's kind of like, okay, why take the stuff? Because then, like, what's the, like, to me, it was kind of like, what's the upside? Now, all the players in Major League Baseball, or back then, they were getting kicked out, and they're still getting shunned 20 years later. So you're a kid where you're coming up, and the sport is like, hey, yeah, I'm playing baseball with the travel team, and I'm seeing all these monsters out there that I'm playing against, and you're kind of holding your own, but it's kind of like, all right, well, some of these guys just seem like they're just a tad bit better. How much of it is natural? At what point do you just give up, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to go do something else? Like, I'm pretty tall, I'll play basketball or something, you know? And I don't blame kids. Like, I don't blame them at all. And, I mean, other sports, it's going to be like, yeah, they might have the same issues, but I don't think without the upside. Because, like, down here in the South, lacrosse is so big, it's crazy to me. Like, it's like, hey, I'm stopping to look to see if they had, like, a hockey stick. I'm like, I'll get someone a hockey stick, you know? That'd be pretty cool to mess around with. No hockey sticks. Like, you want your pick of 300 lacrosse sticks, though? It's like, how many baseball bats do you have? 5. You have, like, 300 lacrosse sticks. And it's like, how many people are doing this? Like, is it the new thing? But I honestly think some of the performance-enhancing drugs, at that point, it's going to be less because you don't have the upside of saying, well, if I get lucky enough, I can make so-and-so millions of dollars in the minor leagues or major leagues. And lacrosse is like, where are you making that money, bro? All you have to do is be decent enough to get on a college team, which if you play and you do the lessons enough, maybe you don't have that. And I'm sure that they have their own issues too. Like, I'm not going to say that they don't. But I also wonder, like, how much of that is going to take away from these other sports, because if you're trying to sell the dream and you still have players, even the guys right on your network with A-Rod, that are out there, and you're a young kid, it's going to be like, hey, yeah, A-Rod, he used to be pretty good. Let me look him up. Oh, wait, he was just on steroids, so is he really good? It's like, well, I don't know. And so it's like, oh, that's who I'd be competing against? Some guy that might have already been bigger than me and better than me, and he just taking steroids too? Like, at what point do you just give up, you know? Right? I mean,
I stand by it. If you have the ability, the eye-hand coordination to hit a baseball or to paint the corners with your pitching, if you can do it, whether you're using the, like, if you can do it, it doesn't matter if you're using steroids or not. That's still a skill that you have to have. You can do steroids all day, but if you can't have the coordination to hit the ball, it doesn't matter. You can be a giant beefcake and still whiff every time.
Well, see, I'm just saying, I think a lot of guys, because like you're trying to narrow it down to like whatever. I think a lot of the guys that have that coordination, you're getting to that next level where you're playing college ball, you're playing travel ball, but you're not on that stuff. So you're getting a lot of good hits that are just gappers, you know, where the next guy, he's on roids, so he's hit the same ability as you, but instead of hitting in the gap, he's now clearing home runs. And so it's like, oh shit, what the hell? This guy's hitting 12 home runs to my 1. And then how am I supposed to compete with that, you know? Batting average pretty much the same. Because I guess steroids would kind of help with some of that where you're just hitting the ball harder. So you're able to hit a couple more ground balls through or something. But I think over time, like you've seen it within the Major League Baseball, just statistics wise, I think where it really helps is a couple things that might have been long fly ball outs are now home runs. And I think at the lower level, you really see that a little bit more, where guys are like, yeah, that guy hits 30 home runs. And then you see him and he looks like a 40-year-old man. And you're like, how old's that guy? 14? Like, yeah, okay, give me a break. My guy. I saw him changing. he was out there. He's like changing oil at the garage like 6 days a week or whatever. Like, I know what he's up to. He's working. He's not 14. So that's what I'm saying. I think NFL has their own problem with like the concussion stuff, where now it's like, hey, young kid, don't play video games. Why don't you go compete outside? And they're like, yeah, but that guy's using cheats, mom. Right? Now I'm going to use cheats on my own video game. But basically cheats as steroids or something in real life. Where in the NFL, it's kind of like, hey, you can run real fast? Awesome. I mean, you can try to get better at that with some of the NFL, but some of the performance-enhancing drugs I think would pretty much just be for recovery, right? Because like getting so much bulkier, like you said for baseball, you could take them and be so gigantic, but if you don't have the coordination to do anything, NFL would kind of be the same way, where you see guys taking roids and they're like linemen getting blown over, right? So I still think it's going to be something that we're going to see a big impact with, because it's only been, 20 years? 10 years since people have really been specializing and high schools have been cutting sports? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
it's more a recent trend.
It's definitely been a more recent trend.
Because even travel, it was kind of starting out really big whenever I played, but that was 20 years ago. No, that wasn't even 20 years ago. 15? I have to think how old I even was, bro. So it's like... So you're like 15, 20 years ago, it's starting to hit big. And I know that some cities had it big, but I'm talking about like everywhere. Now it's like, hey, I only play travel. We don't even have town ball, and we're playing in 3 states away. And you're like, how do your family even pay for that? Like, you guys, every weekend you're traveling out of state to do these like travel tournaments. You're not playing any other sports because you physically can't at that point. And all your parents' money are going right in, so they're hoping that you get a scholarship because they're putting thousands of dollars in the travel team. And if you can't pay for the travel team, tough luck, you're done. You are done because you're not going to be able to compete or have your name out there. So that's where, with the Major League Baseball lockouts, they continue it. I say, get your money. Don't worry about inflation. Don't worry about like whatever. I would say, tell them to take the deal. Because I had said before, their strength in numbers, most Major League guys, I'm surprised they didn't band together and say, hey, we'll take the 100 and 180 or whatever the range was going to be and just sign on for it. Because I know for me, that's going to be a raise for me. And none of those other big stars, they don't give a shit about you. Right? I mean, you hear about like NFL guys buying their linemen like cars and stuff. How many times do you hear that? It's like, hey, I bought my outfield this. Like almost never, right? Maybe a pitcher's buying his catcher or something. But nothing.
Yeah.
They're not going to care. Like, did A-Rod really care when he's slapping the ball out of the hands, taking roids or whatever for the rest of the Yankees? Probably not. Probably not. So why would some no-name guy that's only going to be in the big leagues for like a week not want the extra money of the salary floor, you know? I don't get it. And people are probably like, you're wrong. And I also see now fans are like coming out and they're telling players just to sign. So on the other hand, screw the fans. Like, who cares what they say? Right? These guys, this is their job. Could you imagine if like, say you worked at like some big company like Apple or something, and you're like going to work and Apple fanboys are like telling you to get to work because they need their phones. Like, what the hell are you doing? Get out of here. Or like, what's a Pennsylvania specific one? Sheets. Like, people are just outside Sheets telling you to get in there and make their coffee.
Give me my MTO.
Yeah, get in there, baby. I need this. And you're like, but I need to make a little bit more money. I can't afford like stuff at home. And people were like, the baseball guys, Matt, they're making hundreds of millions of dollars. But yet they're eating like what? Bread sandwiches? This is not even like good stuff. Because like the average MLB salary is 4.17 million, which is down. That's the average. The normal guy. So like, let's look at the MLB salary. What's the minimum? Because that's what most people are making. Because it's not like, you know how like they have the minimum wage and everyone's like, well, they should just raise that because everyone's making that. That's what Major League Baseball has. So it's going to be, it's $500,000 basically. And just think, how long do people's careers last? A year or two, if that.
Yeah, for I would say the average is probably like less than 3 years.
And that's if you make the majors. Because remember, they dump these guys in the minor league. So the minor league, let's see what their minimum is. 10 grand. Matt. So that's single A, 12 grand for double A, 14 grand for triple A. So you could play for the champion, I don't know if it was last year, Durham Bulls. You can play with that as champion, the championship squad, and make half of what a beginning teacher makes. I mean, you work what? A quarter? How many teachers get how many months off? 3? How many the baseball guys get off? 6?
Yeah.
So they're basically making teacher salary. And then if you get that miracle call up to the major leagues, because like when I say it's $500,000, if you only play for a week or two, do you think you're getting $500,000? You get whatever prorated. So you might make like an actual decent amount of money for just that month. And then it's back to eating bread Sammys. And they're like, hey, we almost had cheese on that sandwich, but we had to kind of share it. So we cut the cheese sandwich in half. And you're eating half melted and half bread. And you're like, thanks, man. And it could be like the other team where we just give you a hand bologna and then we squirt ketchup on it. And you have to roll it up.
Hand bologna.
Which sounds like a kid snack. Remember ring bologna? Sometimes you ever have flashbacks, Matt, to when you're a kid and you like crave ring bologna, and then you eat it and your heart thumps for like an hour straight. And you're like, what did I eat? You know what I'm talking about. I know you had to eat that when you growing up. So ring bologna, man. You're like, how did I eat this as a kid and not die? That's probably how the parents like got you to calm down. They're like, eat some of this ring bologna, I'll knock you out for a little bit.
Take the edge off.
But instead of that being a kid, now it's a major leaguer. He's like, I can get through the week if I just get some bologna on this bread. Anything. Cheese. They're like sharing cheese and who knows what else. Because, I mean, if you get really crazy, you could just go through the McDonald's drive-thru and ask for ketchup packets. Get like whatever is cheapest, a coffee. And then you'd have ketchup and bread. I don't know if that would be any better. But these salaries, man, they're not good. Because how many games do you think they play? Right? So single A, it's 10 grand is the minimum. So single game season. I'm going to do some math on this show. I'm going to do it verbally. So single A baseball, we're going to look it up. Because they're going to do however many it is. How long do you think a baseball game is? 3 hours? 4 hours? Because like you get into the go ahead
with the pitch clock and stuff. I think it's going to shave that down to probably from 3 to what, 2.5, 2.
I don't know because did you see the numbers? It was between like 14 and 19 or something like that, wasn't it? Where they're trying to figure out what kind of pitch clock you can get. But also, I wonder when it starts. Does it start when the pitcher gets the ball? Because I think a lot of times the pitcher's going to be fine. Plus, the annoying thing to me is the batter timeout. Are they still going to have a timeout? If you limit it to 3 timeouts for your team a game, then you won't have players that just stand in there and they're like, timeout. Like, wasn't it Garcia Parra that used to just flip his hands? Where he would just be like, oh, yeah, let me fix my batting gloves 300 times because I have OCD. And then people were like, that's cool, right? Right? That's cool. And you're like, not really. Not really at all. Like, what's he doing? That's ridiculous that I'm having to watch this. But that's what I want to see, because you can go ahead and put it out there and say, like, hey, this is the pitch clock. But if you still let a lot of weird nonsense go, it's not going to matter. Like, if the pitcher catches the ball but it doesn't start till he's on the mound, he could be out there hitting that rosin bag, doing something stupid, having spit pulled off his hat, throwing spitballs, like modified stuff. But I mean, that's what I'm talking about. So this might be ridiculous because I didn't think it was this many games. But I just randomly picked the team in single A, the Aberdeen Ironbirds. They're in Maryland. They went 58-61 last year, which is 119 games, Matt. If you average that by, we'll say, I'll give him a nice 2 hours, and then that's like 238. So whatever the regular thing is, and this is just without anything. So they're getting in here and they're doing, let's just say just the games, not practice, would be like $40 an hour just for the games. But you have to cycle in like what? Travel. How long do you think they practice? Because like, let's say, because warm-ups are what? You'd be there, what, 5 hours probably for the whole game? Right?
Yeah.
So if you change that then to $5.95, then you're at what, 17 hours for these minor leaguers, $17 an hour, and that's a very generous estimate. I would say almost double that, to where you're close to what, making minimum wage playing Major League Baseball or professional baseball, I guess, because not Major League. That's why they have the distinction in there. But I would be very shocked if players made anything close to what I said, $17 an hour. Because you would imagine it's going to be warm-ups, all the other stuff. You have to stay after, do the interviews or whatever. And then you're doing that every day. And no breaks if you're playing 119 games. What other job can you have, Matt? Where you're free all day and then at night you're gone for 5 hours? To me, that's just insane. And I know some of these younger guys probably live with their parents or whatever, and they kind of help out. But to me, that's the one thing that I don't know how long we are on the show, but that's my last Major League Baseball thing. I just think it's absurd that some of these guys aren't just worried about not just ending the lockout, but just saying like, hey, we have a chance to kind of improve our situation for all of the players. And we know how bad it is for some of these minor league guys coming up for only a week, which is a majority of guys. And then they're kind of just like, you know what? We don't care. We don't care. The owners still want to do 162 games. They keep delaying the deadline. It was supposed to be February, and now they're like, well, if you do it by next Tuesday again, we can still play all the games. And then they're worried about the luxury tax, which kind of goes ahead and just pays players, because like the Pirates, they only want to use the luxury tax to pay for their salaries, which to me is absurd too. So it just doesn't make sense, where I think they just need to worry about, hey, get this salary cap in place, and then you guys can worry about it next time. Like, why are you signing a 10-year deal or something crazy? Like, worry about getting one in place and then work on expanding it if the MLB, Major League Players Association, or whatever, really cares about it. That's my take on it. And the Major League Baseball was looking to do $700,000 for the minimum salary.
Cricket $60,
and of course, the union asked for 725, or yeah, 725,000, whatever the hell it is. So closer to like almost $1 million, but it's a 5-year deal. It's a 5-year deal. Get it done with what was already better. Like, why keep pushing it for more and more if you don't think you're going to get it? But that's all I have. Anything else for baseball?
No.
I know. I was trying to think. I had some other random things pop up. I think we talked about most of them. Your boy Deion Sanders, dude, he had to get 2 toes amputated. And to me, that's like
that's a rough situation.
It's crazy because I'm almost like he dislocated his toe. And I don't even know if we ever talked about it, because I knew he was wearing the boot. It's kind of like, oh, he probably did something. broke his ankle. I mean, people are getting old, but he dislocated it and then it didn't heal right, so he needed surgery. And then the surgery messed up, and I guess I don't know how it worked, like if they hit a nerve or something, and his toe started to turn black. And they said that it could have spread to his whole leg and possibly killed him, which is just crazy because it was the big toe, and that's the one I think you need for balance, right? Unless that's just a myth that they tell you. Like, watch where you're walking. You don't want to lose that big toe. You'll be crooked all day. Could be an old wives' tale, that. I don't know.
I would think there's something to that.
So, I mean, at least he's more of a hands-on coach, I believe, too. So I think that would kind of mess things up, too. Like, you can't be out there running drills with the guys if he's, like, falling over. So, I mean, I hate to see anyone get hurt, but that's just a scary situation all around. So I hope he gets better. Sad that he has to do that. Man, amputations are one of the things that always freak me out, and I would always worry, like, I don't want to see anyone ever go through that. So, prayers to him. Hopefully he gets a full recovery as best as he can. But, I mean, that's crazy.
Yep.
The other thing I had, my girl Brittany Griner, stuck in Russia. So sad, Matt. Sending her lots of love and prayers from me, you know, making sure that she gets back home safe. A lot of people are taking the time to be negative to her, and I'm just like, bro, calm down. You should be spreading love right now. And get worried about getting one of our best and brightest athletes back into the United States safe and sound. What do you think about that?
I think you got to be careful when you're traveling overseas, because just because you're in a country that allows you to have a lot of freedoms doesn't mean that everyone else is going to just let you just do whatever you feel like. So, moral story, stay in America. Don't go to Russia.
Well, what you have, hashish oil or something?
Yeah.
And I'm like, why do you have that, number one, if it's illegal? Like, you would think that, hey, I'm over here, and I'm doing my thing and getting paid. Why would you even want to risk it? Maybe she needs someone to talk to, which I'm always open. So I know you're probably listening to this. You're a big fan of the show. Call me up.
Probably not from her Russian gulag.
Matt, don't you see our numbers? A big, heavy Russian listenership, and that's probably just her and her teammates. All 5 or 10 or whatever it was. You never know. I know everything comes from the United States here, but I'd say the same thing. A lot of players are overseas, and you always wonder, it's like, hey, so-and-so signed an agreement to go in some place, and I'm always like, kind of weird situation, but maybe that's the only thing they got. Maybe the deal was too good. But, yeah, I hate to see anyone stranded out there. So, I know I kind of was joking, but we'll see if they all come back or what the situation is going to be. I do think it's kind of sad that the United States is like so poor in terms of their professionals that our women think, hey, we also have to play another season in Russia because we don't make as much money. I think there was a 30 for 30 on it, but maybe I'm just misremembering and it was something else. But I think they talked about how they play in the United States for like the marketing and the visibility, but then they can go play in Russia and they're able to just pay, like their league actually pays them real money, like millions of dollars, but they don't have like the same type of stuff. Like they don't have the same media coverage or whatever. So it's kind of like a twofold where if you play in both leagues, you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
At least that's how I understood it, but maybe I'm wrong. You have anything else? That was kind of my final bell stuff. You have anything else for the show?
The only other thing is just actually being able to watch the Sixers now that they got a real score with James Harden playing.
I've been waiting for you to bring this up, man.
He's at the end of the game. He's running steps. He's like Rocky now. That's the missing piece. They got a guy shooting that can shoot.
I just wonder, like, I don't really follow the NBA because some of it's just so crazy to me. And then in the regular season, you don't have to. You really don't have to. People always complain about college basketball regular season. It's like the NBA is the same garbage. And then didn't we talk about some guy saying like, hey, I bet I could score 20 points in a game if you played the entire season and they kept feeding you the ball? Like, yeah, if you practice enough shooting, anyone could do it. because there are a lot of guys that just kind of stand around and that's their thing is to just shoot. And maybe you're not as tall, so it's a lot harder. I mean, going back to Brittany Griner, I didn't realize she was 6'8". I think that's what it said last week when I looked her up, or 2 weeks ago whenever we talked about that. But you never know. Some guys have the size. If they're going to keep feeding you the ball, Matt, as long as you're not like a 2% shooter and you're shooting threes, you only have to hit, a couple threes, 6 of them, 10, 6, 7. But I think it would be 7 to hit 20 points, right?
Yeah.
So do that. You can always flail around and try to get some extra free throws in there. I mean, if you're driving to the hoop, you're going to be in for a bad day. Like, you can't be playing rec league where you're backing them in like you're Denzel Washington. What was that movie with Ray Allen? Wasn't that him? I can't even remember now. But anything else you have for the final bell?
No, that's it. Just finally getting to enjoy some basketball.
I know. I joked about this is unrelated, but as I talked about college, the only thing I had to mention was I think I tweeted out. I don't even have the exact stats, but you always joke about Michigan not winning like anything, and I made fun of like them winning conference titles. They won like 12 of their 27 sports have won the Big Ten in the past year, which to me is crazy. That's like almost half the teams are winning the Big Ten. So.
They're on because sometimes you have to call people out on their nonsense. So they stepped up their game.
Yeah, you're winning it. They beat Penn State in wrestling. It's like, that's absurd. Who even does that? And then just crazy all around. So I think that was the 12th one, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's more. Maybe it should be 13 now. Who knows? But I will just say that it's going to be good to know going forward that Harbaugh's ready to chase the national championship. So I forgot to mention that earlier when I brought it up, but I didn't have anything else for the final bell. So thanks for listening. Hopefully allergies quit kicking my ass so that I can get through the show better next week. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.